Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a senator from Manitoba, I recognize that I live in Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene, and the home of the Métis Nation. I would like to point out that the Parliament of Canada is located on unceded and unreturned Algonquin Anishinaabe territory.
I rise today to speak to Senator Omidyvar's Motion 3, which asks us to adopt Recommendation 8 of the Special Senate Committee's 2019 report on Canada's charitable sector, chaired by Senator Terry Mercer, with Senator Omidyvar as Vice Chair. Specifically, Recommendation 8 is simple and achievable, requiring the Canada Revenue Agency to include questions on tax forms for registered charities and federally incorporated not-for-profit corporations on diversity representation on boards of directors. I applaud Senator Omidyvar for bringing this motion forward. Too often, excellent Senate reports with sensible, needed change strategies are not pursued in such a practical manner. The nonprofit sector is an economic driver and influencer in this country. Canada has over 170,000 charitable and nonprofit organizations that are largely governed by boards of directors that often do not represent the diversity of the communities they serve and Canada as a whole. In supporting this motion, I do not wish to take away from the work these organizations are doing, but to highlight that a lack of diversity and representation saps legitimacy, limits voices and ideas, sows disconnect between groups and communities that these boards serve. Efficacy in the charitable sector is undermined where there are perceptions of bias, exclusion, or mistrust. Further, when boards do not address diversity, a disconnect with the communities they serve will inevitably occur, resulting in limited networks, limited funding sources, and difficulty in developing new ideas. The lack of diversity can create a conformity bias or groupthink mentality, which can lead to making the wrong decisions at a strategic level for effectiveness. Senator Omidyvar has detailed how Canada's charitable sector lacks diversity, particularly in management positions, sometimes called snowcapping. Snowcapping occurs when racialized workers appear on the front lines, while top positions are maintained by non-marginalized individuals. Another unintended consequence is the cloning effect, which refers to the bias, unconscious or otherwise, that sometimes occurs when, in recruiting new board members, trustees tend to seek out those from their immediate circles of influence, almost cloning themselves, with look-alike, think-alike individuals that experience life much like they do, creating a homogeneous board that risks being disconnected from the communities in need. Boards with directors who are not representative of their communities underserve their populations and create barriers for equity-deserving groups to advance to positions of authority. Conversely, a diverse board of directors can bring a realistic view of the community, strengthen the organization's connections and credibility to its constituency, improve fundraising, and assist with targeted, effective policy creation and implementation. In essence, it makes a board more effective at carrying out its mission. Notably, Canada lacks comprehensive reporting mechanisms and statistics on diversity in its charitable sector. In 2021, Statistics Canada launched its first voluntary questionnaire to gather information on diversity among Canada's charities and nonprofit board of directors. While the data was not collected Using probability-based sampling, the results demonstrate the lack of equity in Canada's charitable sector. Over 40% of respondents indicated that their organization does not even have a diversity policy. Conversely, organizations that did report a written diversity policy indicated they had higher proportions of diverse representation among their boards, including individuals living with a disability, First Nations, Métis or Inuit, visible minorities, and LGBTQ+ individuals. Recent developments in Canada's corporate sector indicate that increased diversity reporting requirements can result in concrete diversity advancement for boards of directors. Since amendments were made to the Canadian Business Corporations Act in 2020, requiring publicly traded organizations to disclose information on the diversity of their boards of directors and information related to their written policies concerning diversity, there have been substantive, measurable, positive developments. The amendments likely assisted in spurring a normative change, wherein boards of directors saw increases in the representation of minorities, women, and Indigenous peoples. The starting point for good policy and reform begins with transparency and data and leads to accountability. Motion 3 would galvanize necessary reporting requirements on board diversity within Canada's charitable sector and lay the foundation for more targeted reform based on information and data collected. It may also spur a normative change within the sector by requiring organizations to consider and reflect upon the composition of their boards of directors and their diversity policies, or lack thereof. I commend Senator Au-Revoir for her long and dedicated leadership in the non-profit sector. This motion builds on the crucial work of civil society by shining a spotlight on where further study, data collection, and inquiry are essential to building paths for growth and change that are necessary for a more just and effective Canada with a more inclusive economy and, in turn, a stronger democracy. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.